Today, pig farming faces most of the toughest questions. Does it harm animals? Does it pollute the planet? Is it really necessary? These questions don't come from bad intentions, but from distance between those who produce and those who consume. That is why we must speak with honesty, with transparency, and show what truly happened on our farms. In this chat, Juan Pascual invites us to see pig farming differently, as an activity that cares, innovates, and feeds the world with respect.
Good evening. My name is Juan Pascual. It's a pleasure to address people who are interested in swine production and in probably have a debate or some thoughts, at least from my side, on why producing pigs is sustainable and how can we express and share this in our society that in general does not understand animal production in general and much less pig production. As I said, my name is Juan. I'm a veterinarian. I'm from Spain, and I've been working in the animal health industry for more than 30 years now. And I have quite some experience international. I'm based in Spain, but I have worked in several countries in Europe and also in several countries in the Americas. The United States also had some time ago some responsibilities in Canada and in Latin America. So I think I kind of understand the swine production, and my goal today is to share with you why swine production is sustainable. You have some headlines from different media saying that meat is horrible, meat in general, that meat is linked to cancer, that animal husbandry is responsible for global warming, all that, let's say, narrative that is so frequent in the media. And not only in the media, we have also recently there was a documentary in Netflix called You Are What You Eat, in which was a twin experiment in theory, in which they compare twins 8 weeks with a omnivore diet and 8 weeks with one of them with an omnivore diet, the other one with a vegan diet. The experiment doesn't have the results they expected, but it doesn't matter. It is a documentary that for 4 chapters, it's smearing animal production and all the products like meat, milk, eggs, etc. In some schools in Europe, definitely in my home country, also in France, probably in your country too. Part of the books talk about in a very negative manner of industrial or intensive animal production. We have some initiatives like the C40 cities, in which today at the beginning were 40 cities. Today there are more than 200, a few of them from Canada too, and they want to reduce food carbon print. And one of the recipes they have to do that is to reduce meat consumption. We have a government like that from Denmark that has already imposed a tax on pigs and cows to reduce or to, let's say, find somehow the emissions. And we have the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, that he says he's a vegan, and he appeared in this Netflix documentary I alluded to a few minutes ago, and he has banned not exactly banned, but he has imposed in the public schools in New York the Meatless Monday and the Vegan Friday. So it's important to realize that 70% of the students of New York City come from very poor neighborhoods, and the only good meal that they can get is the school meal. So many children are now without this possibility. Sometimes it's interesting to see how all the corporate world also gets into that bandwagon, in the sense that you see here a photograph of Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Airlines, celebrating a flight that was made a few months ago over the ocean, over the Atlantic, with green fuel. This airline, by the way, has forbidden the use of beef in their menus to fight climate change. But those planes, the fuel of those green planes, was made out of pig fat and beef fat too. So you see the contradiction. They don't serve beef in the meal, but they use beef or pig fat in this case as fuel to go over the Atlantic. So what can we say as positive? Because all industries, no matter which one, have some negative impacts on the environment. That's clear. Also our industry, but we have many more positive things than negatives. That's one, and the ones I want to stress today and highlight are the good ones. So in this picture, you will see a guy from prehistory with a pig, and why the first guy in history started to breed pigs. It was not to produce wheat or barley to give to the pig. Actually, the pig ate anything that the human could not eat, kind of the peel of some fruits, or maybe the skin of some animals that leftovers, or even the smashed bones of some animals. And in the end, after a few months, from this animal that ate anything that was useless for us, we could obtain excellent protein. Actually, animal husbandry is exactly the same thing today, because according to FAO, 86%, and all the information I'm sharing is supported by data. So I was saying this, according to FAO, 80% of what animals eat are either pastures or leftovers from byproducts from different industries that we cannot eat. Pig globally, 50% of what pigs eat does not compete with our food. Even cereals do compete with what because we could eat cereals, but it's true that not all cereals are good enough to produce, let's say, barley not good enough to produce beer, or wheat not good enough to produce bread, because sometimes these cereals need a given amount of starch or a given amount of proportion of humidity, etc. So when cereals are not good enough, they are used in the pig or poultry industry. So that's a recycling effect that livestock has in many of these byproducts. There are many more examples. For example, from the sugar industry, the molasses, or the sunflower seeds that they are transformed into sunflower cake pellets once the oil is extracted. Or, for example, the leftovers of the industries for making juice. But probably in the pig industry, the most, let's say, seen or visible, or that receives most of critics, is soybeans. Soybeans actually, pigs hardly eat any complete soybean. Pigs mostly eat what is left once oil is extracted. And oil is extracted from soybeans for many industries, also for restaurants, for fast food, and also as a precursor of biodiesel. So 40% of the U.S. soybeans oil is used for biodiesel. So what is left from once we have the oil is the soy meal, or the soybean meal, that it doesn't have any other use. It might be used for human consumption. I don't know, because it's rich in protein, but nobody pays for it. Only the feed industry is paying for it. So thanks to pigs, we get rid of something that without livestock would be a lot of tons, thousands of tons of things that we could not consume. I love to give the example of beer. Let me explain the story of beer. And that, I think, illustrates very well the example why livestock in general, but also pigs, recycle. 200 million hectoliters are produced in the US, 200 million hectoliters. Each one needs 20 kilograms of barley. So we get a total of 40 million tons of barley. These 40 million tons of barley looks like a little bit of we cannot sometimes make the proportion of that amount of barley, okay? So if you put a line of trucks with all this barley, you will get a line of trucks that goes from Indianapolis to Miami. Okay, so it's 1,200 miles of trucks, one after the other. What I want to share with this? Animals will eat this barley, pigs will eat this barley. Without animals, without livestock, we would have, just because of the beer industry, just imagine all the industries we have related to the food, all right, for people, we would have a massive problem of ecologic problem, because all that barley, if of no use for animals, it would be just thrown into a dump, and that would be highly contaminating. So here is another example how livestock can recycle and can avoid a really big problem. Another thing that pigs do for us is that they recycle, for example, biscuits which are over the date of consumption, or yogurt. There is a full industry. I know in Europe there are a few companies that even take pizzas that are, again, outdated, or even candy that are outdated or no longer in use. They are processed and they are given or added to the feed of pigs. This is about the feed, but if we go, there are more aspects. Fertilizers. 50% of the fertilizers used to let's say, to nourish our crops come from manure animals in general, and obviously pigs play a big role there. Without animals, we will have manure, and then we will have to, let's say, multiply by 2 the amount of synthetic fertilizers that we're producing, which is a pretty expensive and pretty contaminating process. So animals, thanks to animals, we have this source of, let's say, energy for plants, and then also that manure can be transformed into biogas, which, for example, in Germany is already 10% of the total biogas use they have, and it's a completely green and clean energy. So that's another benefit that livestock and specifically pigs do for us. And let's talk emission, because it's true, livestock produce emissions. But again, we have to go to the source of let's say, of authority in this aspect, which is also FAO. Because if we can read a lot of different data on how much emissions animals produce. The real information comes from FAO, and it's 12% of all global emissions. 12% come from animals, and in these emissions, we have direct emissions, so those gases that come out directly from the animal, and indirect, so all the fuel, all the transport associated to animals or their products. In Canada, for example, the amount is 7%, like in Europe. In Europe, it's also 7%, the total. So yeah, it's important. We have to work to reduce it. And I know the industry is doing a lot of efforts for that, to that end, but it's not the end of the world. I think and actually there are many initiatives to reduce that. And pigs are not the biggest emitter. Pigs, all emissions from pigs is around 1.2, 1.5 of total global emission. We don't have the total emissions of transportation. We only have the direct emissions. The indirect have not been calculated. And then that's not comparing oranges to oranges or apples to apples. The total emissions that, for example, I took here the average American consumption, okay, from the US. So the average American consumes per year 53 pounds of beef, 170 pounds of poultry, and 52 pounds of pork. All that together is a little bit more than 1,000 kilograms of CO2 equivalents. One flight from New York to London is 1.2 kilograms of CO2 equivalents per passenger. And we are only here counting direct emissions, while in the meat we have direct and indirect. So no, it's not true that transport is more contaminating than, or driving a car for 1,000 kilometers is already 200 kilograms. So if you make 5,000 kilometers, you will be pretty high. Also, similarly to the level of meat. Obviously, that changes per country. If your country you consume less beef, which is the most emitting, then you will have a lower carbon footprint in terms of. But even comparing emissions from kilo per kilo, because you will see many times a gram of, let's say, liver emits much more than a kilogram of tomatoes. And that's true, but the amount of nutrients that they have in 1 kilo of liver is much more than what they have in a kilo of tomatoes. So comparing just by the kilo doesn't make any sense. We have to make the correction by the nutritive value of those products. So when you make that correction, liver goes really down and the vegetables come much up. Why? Because you will have to eat a lot of tomatoes to compensate for a kilogram of liver. Actually, a 2-year-old child with more or less 6 grams per day of pig liver, this baby would have all the iron and all vitamin B12 that he or she needs per day. To have the same amount of iron with spinach, this little baby will have to, or 2-year-old toddler, would have to eat 400 grams. For those who have children, compare what a child would eat earlier or better, 6 grams of liver or 400 grams of spinach. I think the comparison is very clear. And even FAO, again, they recommended we have to reduce the emissions from livestock. Today, we are globally at 6,000 million tons. If we don't do anything, we would go to 9,000. So to go to the 2050 objective of 1.9, roughly 2, we have FAO, let's say, advices on some lines of action. Reducing meat consumption will be extremely weak in reducing emissions. What we have to do is produce more effectively so that we can, let's say, reduce feed conversion rate, make pigs grow healthier, grow quicker. So basically, what FAO recommends is to improve productivity and reduce disease. I'm sure people who are listening to this are very good at that, and that's very important. And then when we talk about emissions, we talk about the average. But the average, you can have two different plates with the same content, but with very different emissions. Why? Because not all producers produce with the same quality. It's not the same producing pigs, for example, in open space, or produce them intensively. The breeds are not the same. The technicality that you have is not the same to produce pigs in Canada or produce pigs in China. In China, you still have lots of thousands, millions of backyard pigs, whose production is extremely low, productivity is extremely low. So you cannot compare by saying it's a piece of pork or it's or even vegetables, right? Or a piece of a salad. You cannot compare emissions because of just of the ingredient. Pigs, on livestock in general, but pigs produce many more things other than meat. We have glue, for example. We have fertilizer. We discussed that. We have music instruments, strings. We have explosives. We have antifreezers. So the many components, many, let's say, byproducts of pig production are really used in many industries that without these animals, we would have to, let's say, start from scratch, and that would be extremely expensive, costly, and contaminating. And then one particular topic I want to discuss around that is the lots of medicines, for example, cardiac valves. So when a person has a problem in the heart, sometimes you need a transplant of valves, and pigs are let's say, the source of choice. There have been already some transplants of kidneys from pigs to humans. There are at least 2 cases that I am aware of, and this will become, I think, the norm in 5 to 10 years from now. But the most important point I want to underline here is heparin. Heparin is a blood thinner, is the word widely used when people suffer from stroke or they need some kind of vascular surgery. This medicine saves 100 million lives per year. 100% of this medicine, heparin, comes from pigs. It's a product made by pigs naturally in their intestine, and this is used by the let's say, pharma industry to produce this medicine. Actually, when the African swine fever hit China about 4 or 5 years ago, hundreds of millions of pigs had to be slaughtered, and this medicine became scarce, and it was at the top of the FDA list as a product that they really needed to have some stock, because so far today it's not possible to manufacture it, or it's too expensive just to manufacture it, let's say, artificially. So here important for people who think that they can live without animals or can live without eating meat. What would be the solution for 100 million people that need heparin every single year to save their lives? So up to here, I wanted to share with you all these components of, let's say, ecologic aspects of swine production. But now I don't want to stop here. I want to continue with diet and health. Why meat is so important in our diet. Some people, it's obvious that some people can live without meat, but it's very difficult. Extremely difficult, I would say. Actually, information I have in France, in Spain, in the United States, the amount of vegans are around 0.2 to 1%. After 2 years of being vegan, they just drop that diet because they cannot, let's say, continue to do that. And even it's studied that they dream very often on just having a meal with meat. And why is that? We could obviously spend hours speaking about that, our evolution, the size of our intestine, the shape of our dentition, and the enzymes, so our stomach is very acid. So there are many reasons. But let's look at first of all what lots of doctors say, because some people say, well, diets without animal source food are healthier. That's not true. At least 14 medical societies have explicitly made it, let's say, advised against diets without animal products, particularly for children, adolescents, and women, especially pregnant women. Even WHO, the World Health Organization, has produced some reports stating that particular children who, let's say, stop breastfeeding, they have to continue to eat meat, eggs, or fish, according to let's say fully develop their capabilities. I want to stop here a moment because we could, let's say, use a lot of examples, but I want to stop with anemia. In the world, according to UNICEF, 30% of women in reproductive age, which according to UNICEF is women from 15 to 49 years, 30%, so almost 600 million of women at that age, suffer from lack of iron. Obviously, there are several reasons for that, but one key component is a short amount of meat in their diet. And the reason for that is that you could eat a meal with meat and without meat, and on the meal, you have the same amount of iron. So on spinach, on lentils, on many vegetables, you have iron. The problem is that once you eat those products, those foods, then the absorption of iron from plants and from animal source foods is completely different. So we can absorb a big amount of the iron and zinc that is present in meat. We can hardly absorb any of the iron that is coming from vegetables, because the let's say the chemical form is different. And this is a problem obviously in countries like India. India, 70% of women suffer from this condition. But India, is the country in the world with the lowest meat consumption. However, in Europe, in my home country, in Spain, and also in the US, in the UK, 14% of women present this condition. And uh, the, the Society of Gynecologists of Spain released a letter 2 years ago, alarmed because they observed many young women, particularly, that didn't eat meat, and they were suffering from this condition. There are two correlations very interesting here. One is that the countries eliminating any other factor, okay? I mean, if people smoke or they don't smoke, if they drink or don't drink, etc. So eliminating all other factors, countries where you have the highest meat consumption, you have also the highest life expectancy. And then for those children that eat meat or other animal source foods, their academic performance is much better. Now, the world needs more meat. Some people say, no, we have to eat less meat. And that could be true for some people in some, let's say, affluent countries or Western countries. But in general, the world needs and will need much more meat. First of all, because economy with time is doing better, and those countries that little by little get, let's say, a better economy, they want to provide to their children with the rich foods. Okay, a healthy diet, according to the World Bank, is a diet that provides you all the nutrients that you need to run a healthy, lively life. So a diet that provides you the energy you need. So basically, it's bread or potatoes, so foods that have high energy. And the cost of these, let's say, energy sufficient diet is about $0.50, and the cost of a daily healthy diet is about $3.3 per day. Okay, and we have in the world about 800 million people. It's a lot. Even one should be one too many, right? But how many people cannot afford a healthy diet? And you have 2 billion people. That's what the United Nations calls the hidden hunger. So many people who can afford a diet, $0.50, right, per day, and they can afford a diet with all the energy they need, but they cannot afford the $3.3 that comes with a diet that has all the components they need. And what is missing in this diet? Animal source foods, mostly meat. So the world needs more meat and not less meat. So many people, or some headlines and some activists said, well, when COVID hit, that uh, animal intensive production was a source, a brew for let's say bacteria, virus dissemination. That's not true. Absolutely not. Actually, when animals are produced confined, they are protected. So if there is a virus or there is a bacteria, if they have vet care, that is controlled. The animals are slaughtered. We are seeing that with, for example, with the avian flu that has hit many countries, and uh, actually it comes from um, migratory birds. So it comes from wild birds to the farms, but it's controlled in the farms pretty well. And actually, when you have a farm, when you have, let's say, meat that you can buy for affordably, even if they are not the best cuts, as you have here in the photos, maybe not the best cuts, but in the end, these cuts have also protein and are nutrient dense and rich. When you have that production affordably, you don't go to hunt uh, bats or monkeys. It could seem a little bit strange for us, but in some African countries, still they kill lots of animals, actually up to 70 kilos per inhabitant a year. That's obviously very damaging for biodiversity. Um, that's really a source for virus spreading because actually Ebola, AIDS, and COVID came from hunting animals. Uh, so I think that having good farming practices and having animal production controlled by vets, etc., is preventative of pandemics, and it's also, in this particular case, something that protects biodiversity. Animal welfare. I think obviously animal welfare is our responsibility. We breed animals and they have to be in good care. We have to pay attention to that. We have sensors to measure temperature, humidity, CO2 concentration, ammonia concentration. We have cameras that monitor the movement of piglets and just to, let's say, observe if there is any anomaly. We have precision nutrition. So we have lots of things that we don't have in our offices, actually, right? Or in our jobs. So that proves that we really take care of animals and that's right to be so. And probably we have to do more. Photograph, you see the sow in the cage. Many people get crazy about that. In Europe, for example, they cannot be in cages more than for the lactating time, let's say 4 weeks of lactation. But we have the sow in the cage because otherwise she would, let's say, crush the piglets, right? So sometimes welfare is a balance between the different players in this particular moment. Another very important aspect of livestock and pigs in particular is that in many let's say cultures, due to cultural or religious factors, women cannot own property or cannot own land, but they can own a few animals, and with those few animals, they can breed them, sell the meat, sell even the manure, because in some of these countries it's used as fuel. And then they start a virtuous circle of economy. They improve their self-esteem because they are an economic, let's say, player in their community. They invest that money in their children, education and nutrition, and it's one of the levers to take them out of poverty. And that's very important in many countries. And I think livestock is so important that many times from our, let's say, focus from a first world country, sometimes this is neglected. Dogs and cats need meat to live. I think it's lovely to have pets, and I think the world is a better place with pets. But definitely without meat, without livestock production, we couldn't have these animals with us. Some people think that raising animals is wrong. You have here a book that is a little bit the Bible of the animalist or the animal rights movement. The author of this book is Peter Singer. It's a philosopher that is really against animal husbandry. He says that basically human life and animal life have the same value. Particularly, he says that if we are open to experiment on animals because they are less clever than we are, or they don't have they are not conscious of themselves, so they don't speak. We should be open to experiment also on people who are in coma, because in the end, these people cannot speak. They are not conscious of themselves. I think this is extremely, how to say that, disgusting, because even if a person is in coma, this person continues to be a father, a mother, a child, or a citizen. It's someone that releases heat, and that heat through the hands could be felt by another human that is holding that hand. Um, and I think that sometimes the excessive humanization of people, or this kind of ideology, is not about humanizing animals, but about bestializing human beings. So I think that we could also have a full discussion on this particular topic, but I think that is very important, because if someone believes that the life of an animal has the same value as the life of a person, then for me the discussion is over. Another thing that people who don't like animal production say often is that, well, if I don't eat animals, then I don't contribute to, let's say, poor treatment of animals, or I'm not responsible for the killing of any animal. That's not true. Um, Actually, to produce, let's say, any kind of crop, you have to utilize insecticides. You have to eliminate rodents. Um, Even I don't know, in your country, in my country, there are some birds that nest on the cereal that is about to be harvested, and then many of those animals are, or let's say, killed by the machinery. So no, it's actually, if you eat one cow and you get all that protein from one cow, you're slaughtering one animal. To get all that protein just from vegetables, you would have to, let's say, culture a given amount of surface, and you would have to kill probably many more animals, rodents, birds, insects, little reptiles that when the tractors get into the fields are also smashed or crushed. So yes, unfortunately, we cannot eat without some animals dying. That's a fact of nature. That's the way it is, and not necessarily a vegan menu has less blood than a carnivore menu. Oftentimes, could be the opposite. Then, of course, if we respect all lives, we should respect also the lives of rats. We should respect the lives of ticks. We should respect the lives of mosquitoes. In Paris, of people protesting against the rat control measures of Paris. Very few people, but well, at least they are coherent, right? Because if you respect the life of all animals, you cannot make any distinction. But to me, what matters here, I'm coming to an end in a few more comments. Um, Meat is an essential part of food, and food is much more than just nutrition. It's family, it's conversation, it's society, it's friendship, it's being together. And I think that meat contributes extremely highly to all those things, which are, let's say, from a human anthropological perspective, if you want, extremely important for what we are as human beings. So, yes, there are many, many myths that I think I have uh, debunk somehow. People could say, look, basically, there are three reasons for people to, let's say, stop eating meat, which is I will be healthier, I will make a contribution to climate change, and I will not, let's say, contribute to animals dying. I think that three of them are false premises. The three of them have been debunked. Last word is that we have to change the narrative. I mean, nobody will come to change the narrative for us. I think all of us have friends, have family, have work peers, um, are members of our church or school, or doesn't matter. We are citizens, we contribute to society. Let's share the message. There are many more positives in pig production, in livestock production, than negatives. And the contribution we make to the world to have affordable, healthy, rich, dense food, mostly produced by byproducts of vegetable production for humans that otherwise would be just left on the fields to rotten and contribute to contamination or or, or to emissions. I think what livestock is doing and pig production is doing is really great, and we have to be very proud of what you are doing. And let's share the message. Don't stay shy. We have many reasons to be proud. Let's share that. Thank you for the attention. Hope that these words have been of use. I have published recently a book that you can find, in which I elaborate many in depth all the topics I have shared, reasons to be an omnivore for you and the planet, and also I can be found on Twitter and LinkedIn, where I write. Normally LinkedIn I do that in English, on Twitter more in Spanish. But anyway, feel free to reach me. It's a pleasure to know that I'm talking to producers from a great country like Canada that I have visited a few times. I know it, and it's a wonderful country, and looking forward to having the opportunity to be in personally one day with you. Thank you very much.
Pig farming isn't perfect. No industry is, but it is honest, essential, and full of people who dedicate their lives to doing things better every day. We don't just raise pigs, we feed the world. Before we end, here are 3 takeaways to reflect on and share. First, don't assume what you read online is the full story. Visit a farm, talk to a farmer. Second, remember that behind every kilo of pork are real families who care for their animals with dedication. Third, sustainability and animal welfare aren't optional. They are daily commitments on mother farms. Explaining this isn't just about defending an industry, it's about honoring a profession that feeds the world and deserves respect.